Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my sewing channel. My name is Nicole. If this is your first time, welcome to SewGnar Sewing Patterns channel. On today's video, I am going to show you all the little tips and tricks that I've learned when I just started working with wax cotton. This is a relatively new textile to me. I've only worked with it a couple times in the past, and so these last few weeks I've just really dove head first in, and I've just picked up a few things along the way, and y'all have been asking for a video, so here we are. Today I am going to, as I'm videoing, I'm going to be showing you how I made this range backpack shell. This is all wax cotton. So this was the first time for me, because as you know, I typically do all cork, but this was fun because I padded and quilted the panels here, and yeah, just used all wax cotton throughout. I have not done the inside yet, so this is still just a shell, but I'm sure that once I get it fully lined, it's going to be nice and a little bit more sturdy. Wax cotton in and of itself is a flexible, pliable fabric, so anything that has a wax cotton bottom will eventually shrink down. So anyways, without further ado, enjoy my tips and tricks. Be sure to leave me a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, share, pin, yada, yada, yada. Thank you. So here are just a couple examples of projects I've been working on recently. This is, I don't know the name of it, but this is like a light gray. This is actually 3 different color grays. Hard to tell, but this gray is the lightest. This is slightly darker than that one, and then obviously the dark gray. But so this is a 1-inch grid that I did, and then I also quilted the bottom here. And so this one I quilted with foam underneath it, which is generally how I do it. And then this bottom section I quilted with just Peltex, so it's much thinner. Let's see, there you go. So that's the thickness of it, whereas the foam is quite thick, but it gives that loft to it, which I really like. Here is another bag. So this one I did matching thread on, so you can still obviously see the waffle, but you can't see the thread. It doesn't stick out. This one is the same size waffle, so 1 inch, but I used a beige thread, which you can kind of see in person, but because it is the salmon peachy color is kind of, I mean, when you're on the color scale, it's not that close of a color, but when it's laid up next to it, it kind of looks the same. Like here on the strap, obviously there's a difference, but either way. So this is kind of like a slightly contrast thread. And then as compared to this, so I used beige thread on this green. I think this is called cypress green. I just got some wax canvas from Fabric Funhouse when they had their end sale, their remnant sale, and that's when I picked up all these colors. But yeah, so I've really just begun playing around with it, and I'm just really in a quilting phase right now. So I'm quilting all the things. So on this panel, I did a 1.5 inch waffle, which, you know, looks significantly larger when it's laid next to each other, but I really love it. And so I'm just gonna kind of show you how I did this. It's not anything crazy, but you guys seem to enjoy simple process videos, so I thought that I would show you because I was working on this. So on this one, let's see if you can see it. I don't know if you can really see it, but in my folds, I messed up my line work here, and so I have multiple lines on this specific stitch. I have multiple fold lines, not stitch lines, but so I will show you in a little bit how I get rid of that as well too. So this will be my fun video on tips and tricks. But again, I am not a pro by any means. But anyway, so this is what the cork looks like when you get it. It has fold lines in it, which if you wanted to, you could use a hair dryer and heat it up, and it will take some of the crease out, but it's always wax canvas has memory, so anything that you do to it, it's gonna hold on to. And the first thing that I like to do before I quilt is crumple it up, because after you quilt it, you can't. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like you're wrecking the foam, like the cells in the foam. So I like to give the initial crumple to get that watery look before I quilt it. And then when you're constructing a bag, I mean, obviously when you're flipping a bag from inside out, you're gonna get more wrinkles. But I don't know. I also just really like the way that it looks, so I like to do it so that I can enjoy it too. So where's the earlier? The way that I create my grid is I just kind of start depending on what I'm making. I just start. So I'll go from one side to another, and using my ruler, I will line up where I'm going to start. So on this one, this is going to be part of the same bag. So I did 8 inches up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I did a 4-inch grid. So I did 8 to 12. So I'm going to line up on this line intersection and this line intersection over here, and I'm just going to pull it up and fold it over, move my ruler out of the way, and then crease it with my fingers. And then I also like to use this weeding tool from my brother's Scan and Cut to just really create a nice flat crease. And then you can see it makes a very obvious line. And so from there, I'm just gonna line up, because I did a 1.5 inch grid. I'm gonna use my 1.5 inch line on my ruler and lay it on that line that I just created. And then just keep it moving. I'll go. So if you have nails, you can, when you lay it on the lines, just go under with your fingers and push it over, and then you can create that initial crease by running your fingers along the edge of your ruler. And so you see it makes a really light line, but then that's when you can add the additional crease to it. So I generally start at the middle. I don't really know, it's just personal preference for me. So once I go to one side, I flip and start on the other. So once I get all the way done, or all the way, like the whole length of what I've done, you need to flip it and go the other direction. Or if you wanted to just do that type of pattern, you totally could. I haven't played with that yet, but I definitely want to do like chevron and arrows and things like that. But right now I'm just really big into the waffle. So I did a 4-inch span, so I'm just going to mirror that on this side by lining everything up. There we go. So now I have my grid that I'm going to use, and I just need to cut out my foam. So when I'm quilting this, I want to be sure that after it's done being quilted and I'm sewing it into a bag that my seams aren't super thick, because then that makes it difficult for turning, and your seams won't lay correctly. It just causes issues when you have too much bulk. So I cut a 1/2 inch in on either side, and generally I sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that should be more than enough. But on some occasions, I do like to flip and then top stitch around the seam. And that is much, much easier when there's not any foam right there. And I know that because I just did this bag and there was foam there. So I just need to cut out. So 1/2 inch off every side. 4.5, 3.5 by 16. That was not long enough. Alrighty then, just double check my measurement here. Okay, and so the way that I like to adhere it to the wax canvas is with basting spray. I have seen Fabri-Tac works really well too, but I like basting spray when I'm quilting anything, just because I want to have maximum coverage and I don't want there to be gaps, which would happen with Fabri-Tac. So I'm just going to spray. I just have, let's see, Taylor Quilt Basting Spray. It's just, I got it at Walmart forever ago. I'm just going to spray over my trash can. Whew, dusty. Go. And then, sorry, I was telling my dog to go, not you guys. Lay this down, and then I will apply pressure, even pressure with my ruler. And then there we go. Now we would just move to the machine, or we will move to the machine and just quilt all these lines. All right, so I like to start from the middle of my work, so that way I can apply even pressure as I'm sewing, so that we don't get any bubbles. All right, and I'm using a 4.5 stitch length. I like the way that a long stitch looks, especially when it's contrasting, because you can really see it against the background. So we're just going to continue sewing just like that. You can see it's already starting to create that buckle, which will make that nice waffle later. And so I'm just going to work from one side, sides out, the same way that I folded. Sorry, my dogs are playing in the background. Go. And it's nice because we don't have any excess in here, so it's creating a nice tight waffle print. All right, so now I'm just going to flip it and start working my other lines. And again, I start in the middle. Ooh, I centered this nicely. Normally I'm not that good. There we go. So I figured that I would show you how I get the lines out whenever I do a wrong crease. So you can see right there when I was folding to make my lines how I messed my crease line up. So the way that I get them out is my iron that's dirty. I need to clean it. And I have it turned about 3/4 of the way up. And then what I'm going to do is use a pressing cloth, which is just 100% cotton. This is actually some old Michael Miller fabric that's from my stash. But I'm just going to lay it on top of the wax cotton and then apply some heat. And what this is going to do is it's going to remelt the wax into the cotton. And you don't want to hold the heat on for too long because it can mess with the color. But you hold it on just long enough. You can see this whole section where I hit the iron now has no wrinkles. It has none of the fold lines. And so I'm going to let that cool because right now it's kind of soft to the touch because the wax is soft. And so once it cools, it'll stiffen up again, and then I can re-crinkle it. Then I figured I've got this coyote brown, and this is how it was folded, and I want to get those lines out too. So, and this I can show you. This is like not crinkled at all. This is straight off the yard edge. And so when you're using the iron, I don't know if you can tell, but this cotton absorbs some of the wax. Excuse me, pardon me, I just ate dinner. It absorbs some of the wax out of the wax cotton. So this in and of itself is collecting the wax. So now I'm essentially waxing this a little bit, but I don't mind because it's a scrap. But you will notice that if you use your iron to get the lines out. So scooch back up. Ooh. You can see I don't know if you can see the steam. My iron's burning the wax off of it right now. But so here's one line, and then this was the second line. You can see it's still kind of there because, like I said earlier, the wax cotton kind of has a memory, if you will. So it doesn't get it out fully, and you probably can't pick it up on the video, but it is kind of discolored just in that line. But I think once it cools down enough and then I can re-crinkle it back up, you're not even going to notice. So now I'm going to get this big line out. And you can see it when you're using the iron. You can see the wax. It glistens when it warms up in the shape of my iron. But again, you probably can't pick that up on oh, there you go. See the shape of my iron right there? You can see exactly where I laid it. And so that's what I'm talking about. It will kind of discolor just ever so slightly. And then the other thing that you need to remember when you are reheating the wax, and you can tell that it's transferring to here, that means that it's coming out of your wax cotton. So eventually, you know, if you carry your bag a lot or whatever you make out of this, if you carry it a lot, what's going to happen is eventually you'll need to re-wax it, which you can do. It's not like hard to do. It's just time consuming, but it can definitely be done. And Fabric Funhouse does sell the C4 bars as well. My kitty is talking to me. But yeah, so that is how I get the lines out. So let's see, this one has cooled. You can see this is where I ironed it. So I'm just going to re-crunch it up. Like I said, I don't like to do this to the phone, but it's all for you guys. And so there you go. And now no one's the wiser. You can't tell where I messed up my fold line. All right, this is pretty cooled down, so we will crunch this. So you'll notice if you have wax cotton and you're working with it a lot, it becomes a lot more pliable in your hands. It will transfer the wax just a little bit onto your hands. Like if you make a whole bag, you'll notice at the end of the day that your hands feel a little waxy. But if you, I can't remember what I was gonna say. Oh, that's right. So when you're working with it, it will soften up. It'll become a little bit more pliable. But then if you take it outside during the cold, it will stiffen up and get a lot harder, but it will keep these crease lines, the look of it. But another, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you leave, say, a backpack in a hot car, then the wax is gonna soften. And then when it re-hardens, you won't have as many wrinkles in it. So it is kind of a fun texture to play with because you can change the look of it a lot. So yeah, so that's how I get my wrinkles out. And so here you go, after re-wrinkling it. You can still kind of see this main line here, but when I get it all folded and sewn, I highly doubt that's going to be what people are noticing. So another fun aspect of wax cotton, sorry, forgot what I was working with for a second, is, as I've been referencing, the memory that it has. And one of my favorite things, and if you've been following me for any amount of time, then you know that I like to cut corners when I can because I'm lazy. And so cutting the ultimate corner is not interfacing, which you can't interface unless you use sew-in interfacing. You can't interface wax cotton, or you can't use fusible rather. But the point that I was going to show you is you can just finger press everything. That's my favorite, or one of my favorite aspects of it. So this is going to be the inside of my pocket. 10 points to you if you can guess what I'm making. So it just makes the job of everything so much easier because you don't have to use your iron and you don't have to just, I don't know, interface. So it just makes it a lot easier in my opinion. And so just from folding it now, I know where I need to fold these lines at. Which I folded that one backwards. So as you can see, it just makes everything so much easier. Oops, I messed this one up. Do that. And so if I didn't want to, I wouldn't have to, but I'm going to go and top stitch down my cargo pocket fold. So I have my cargo pocket sewn. So something that I don't know if you can see it, but when you're working with wax cotton, it leaves very obvious marks. So like your feed dogs, or if your foot drags across it, it picks up on every single scratch. So that is something to think about as well. See, here's all my feed dog marks. And that is another thing when you're working with wax cotton. It will eventually gum up your feed dogs, so you need to clean it. You can clean it with rubbing alcohol. And any sort of like a seam ripper that you don't mind getting yucky, or any kind of dull, or an old seam ripper would probably work best. But everything comes together so nicely with it. And you can still use glue, so Fabri-Tac works on it really well. So I'm gonna make a zipper sandwich using Beacon Fabri-Tac. Takes it a little bit longer to adhere, but it does hold it. And then I'm going to glue this side down. And because I was able to finger press this fold line, now I have that for whenever I am gonna flip and top stitch my zipper into place. This fold line, I'll just be able to flip it right back over. Oops, once it's glued down and sewn down. Another plus of working with this textile is that when you cut it, it's cut and it stays in a straight cut line. I mean, it will fray, you can pull the fibers out, but like when you're lining up your edges, it's so easy because it's such a straight line cut, which again, I really like because that's very similar to cork, and that's just what I like. So yeah, I'll go sew this together and then I'll show you how it flips even with the double, with the cargo fold, with that really thick section. I'll show you how it flips. So I just sewed this together. And so even with this double fold, so there's 3 layers of wax cotton on this cargo section. And it still just flaps right over and stays where it's supposed to be. And look, the fold on the line, on the zipper, is just perfectly straight without even trying. I went and top stitched through all those layers, which now that's 6 layers of wax cotton right there. Look how thin it is, A. And B, I didn't have to change anything. So I'm still using my standard Schmetz Microtex needles. I'm using, I think it's a size 12. Oh no, so it's a size 14. And it is making easy work of all of this, which I'm pleasantly surprised. I do have a really long stitch length, but like I was saying when I was quilting this section, I just really like the look of it because on contrasting textiles, the thread length, you can like super duper tell, and I like that. Something that I just noticed that I figured I would include in this video is that this shrunk when I was quilting it, which that happens in cork. I don't know why I didn't really pay attention to it, but until I laid it up against this front, it didn't dawn on me I just didn't remember. So this I had measured out and it shrunk by 1/2 inch, which you can tell when you're laying it on the part that it's supposed to be the same length of, but I'm not super worried about it, so I'm not going to be concerned with it. But that is just something to note, that if you are going to quilt it, probably add an extra 1/2 inch, so 0.25 on either side. Let's see. And it shrunk just ever so slightly on the length, but the width definitely, or no, the length is what shrunk, but the width stayed fine. So that I would show you how this is looking, A, and B, I've noticed that whenever I was attaching this shrunken piece to this piece, the taller piece, it actually stretched back out quite nicely. You can see, so it went from 1/2 inch being too short by 1/2 inch to 1/8 inch. So I'm going to replicate it on the other side and we'll see if it does the same thing. But I noticed when I was sewing that it just kind of laid all of the ripples from the side edge. It pulled them flat again. So I will see if it happens again on this one, and then I'll show you a completed picture of the front of this really cool range backpack. When I am making my straps, I use the same basic overall method that I use when I'm making cork straps. However, for the top color, you have to fold under the sides as well. So basically, the breakdown is if you want a 1-inch strap, then you're going to cut the bottom color to be 2 inches and the top color to be 1.5 inches. Fold them in towards the center, line up the raw edges, and then you layer them wrong sides together, and then sew 1/8 seam allowance all the way around. So it doesn't really differ in the main overall method, but you have to fold over the top as well. And so this is gonna be my backpack strap, and this is gonna be 1.5 inches wide. So I cut the bottom color at 3 inches and the top color at 2.5. And then you, again, fold it in towards the center, lay wrong sides together, and top stitch. Regarding rivets and waxed cotton, I thought that I would just show you what I am seeing. So I put a rivet here on my bag, as I always do, to hold the weight, or just to reinforce this bottom, the lower closure strap. And I noticed that so the wax canvas, there was only 3 layers here, or 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 7 layers here, and it's still so incredibly thin that I had to bolster it with a triple layer of cork, and that made it sit really nicely. And it's just, because it is so thin, and when it lays flat, it really flattens out. This right here is 9 layers, and you can't tell. I mean, it doesn't feel like 9 layers whatsoever. So what I'm gonna have to do for all of these rivets that I'll put back here on the straps is 1 strip of cork along the whole thing. Now on these, this is the strap anchor or the backpack strap anchors. I did not bolster those with anything inside, and this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is 8 layers, and the rivet itself is seated nicely, but you can tell that it could have dealt with a few more layers. So I could have put cork or a few more layers of wax cotton in there, but all in all, it's fine. They're just not flush, which is okay. Another thing that I noticed is when you're using a rivet press, you see the press creates rings around the rivets, and you could just hit that with an iron to get those marks out. One last tip that, or not tip, but something that I've tried is I used edge paint on the very edge of the wax canvas, and just kind of like picking at it, it doesn't seem like it'll come off. I don't know how it'll last over time, but it does seem like it sealed the edges, and I'm interested to see how it shakes out with use. But I wanted to say that you could probably get away with this rather than doing the double and triple fold like you have to do with fraying fabrics. I feel like if you're going to use this method, just be sure that you cover all the sides of the fabric so that nothing is exposed. And be sure to use base coat. This is 1 layer of base coat here, and then of course the color. So I'm gonna paint this dark brown that I got. And so what I did is I just kind of piled it up there. I don't know if you can see it, but so I just kind of made a thick edge and just dabbed it all along. And I'm gonna do that to the other side and then let it dry, and then I can finish the exterior shell. So that concludes my tips and tricks video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Again, I'm not an expert. I think I said that probably no less than 10 times throughout this video, but I can do a little bit more research. I can talk to Fabric Funhouse. If you have any specific questions, let me know and I will do some digging. Other than that, I hope that you enjoyed yourself. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That really helps me get seen and get my name out there. So that is it. Oh, also, if you are ordering from Fabric Funhouse, which of course is where I get all my cork and all of my wax cotton, be sure to use code SewGnar10. That's capital SEWGNAR10 for 10% off your first order. Thanks guys, have a great day.